Welcome back to another episode of KKC Consulting. With me today, I have Mohammed. He came all the way from Accenture just to deliver this podcast, so I hope you guys enjoy. We'll be going over so many different things, but especially data and AI, because he's under that field. Now, Mohammed, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Of course, happy to be here.
All right, now let's just get started. Talk to me about your journey.
Sure. So, sort of similar to you, I know we just had a brief chat. I kind of had no idea what consulting was prior to university. I sort of had a sense of, the big four firms, so like accounting, this can sort of imagine Deloitte, KPMG, EY, and PwC as well. And I just thought, they did accounting stuff like audit and tax.
Right.
But then for sure, uni, we had this, our consulting club, which is LCC. We had this event where they bring in a bunch of consultants from the likes of McKinsey, Accenture, Deloitte, and whatnot. In that event, I sort of heard from these people that like, hey, you get the opportunity to sort of work across various industries with all types of different clients, and you get exposure to sort of very, very senior level leadership, and you also get to travel a lot.
Right.
So I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. And at the end of it, you're sort of solving a business problem, whether that's leveraging technologies or leveraging analytics, or you're sort of transforming how a business does certain things. So I thought that whole sort of notion was cool, and I learned a little bit about what consulting was. So my first sort of internship, I applied to Deloitte. I just sort of cold applied on their website, and I kind of went through and I got the offer, and sort of did my first internship. I guess sort of like a typical BA type role. For the first weeks, as a sort of an internship, you don't kind of do a whole lot. It's like you do a bunch of learning modules, like online learning modules, but and then you get put on a real client project. So I think that's really, really enriching. I sort of remember like not knowing anything about the corporate world. Like, how do you sort of send emails? Like, I'd never used Outlook before. So actually, funny story. This one time, this manager like comes over to me. He's like, "Yeah, I sent you an email. Do you want to check it?" I had no idea how to like refresh my Outlook. I was like, I don't see it. She's like, hit refresh. I was like, where's the hit refresh button? But anyways, funny story. But I think I definitely like learned a lot in that first term. I remember being in rooms with sort of like presidents of like a bunch of utility companies, and I was like, okay, I'm just a fucking intern. I'm taking notes, but like this is really cool.
Right.
And obviously like when you sort of expose or like when you're in that environment, it's tremendously powerful from a sort of personal growth perspective across all of the soft skills, which I think I was a little bit more technical back then. So I think that was definitely attractive, I would say. Then I sort of went back to Deloitte, sort of explored more of a data and analytics type role, so a little bit of like data science and analytics. And then COVID hit, so there was a hiring freeze at Deloitte. Then I went to PepsiCo and did sort of like a mix of like data analytics, science, and product management type of work. Went back to Deloitte, sort of doing like M&A advisory work, working with a bunch of like PE clients during the hot M&A market. Absolutely brutal. I fucking hated it. I was working like 80 hours, maybe not like 70, 80 hours. But I learned a lot. I got exposed to like sort of PE, what that whole thing shebang looks like, what sort of finance entails. But I was kind of turned off. But obviously you got to work like with the investment teams from a bunch of PE firms. I think that's kind of cool. You get to sort of see somehow like companies are bought and sold, how they're valued,
Right.
and sort of how you kind of determine what's good and what's shit. So like DD, I guess due diligence. That was cool, but I sort of decided at that point like finance was not for me. Sure, the money is a little bit more attractive, but again, I think there's just other fields where it'll match, but your work-life balance and sort of what you do in life, and I guess the enjoyment or the fulfillment that you derive or the meaning that you derive from that job, in finance was not a good fit for me. Sorry, I think this is getting like super long-winded, but and so I graduated, and then I sort of had the opportunity to interview with, I would say, like probably most consulting firms except for like McKinsey. Even sort of like some really niche boutique ones like Roland Berger. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Uh, so I think you sort of have to decide between like a tier 2 firm or like the likes of Accenture or like a big four. Ultimately, I think I decided Accenture because I did want to do like data and AI.
Fair enough.
I spent about a year doing research with my professors in undergrad, sort of exploring applications of machine learning in corporate finance and financial theory, sort of like at the intersection of both. And at that point, I kind of knew what was happening in the AI space, and I knew it was picking up traction. There was a lot of cool shit being built. So I was like, oh, I think this is going to be really big. And of course, I would love to get involved now. So like obviously, if you're coming early, sort of like think about the internet age, right? All the people who like were involved earlier, like most of them are like billionaires now. Like if you're into that, but yeah, it's really cool because then you get to be involved in shaping that, and then you get to sort of take on the leadership role to see as the field evolves. And I was really, really interested in that, right? I wanted to be sort of a leader within the data and AI space, sort of long term. So I was like, no better place to do that in consulting because, fast progression, exposed to sort of varied types of projects, right? Varied types of clients across many, many industries. So I was like, yeah, I think like consulting is probably the fastest way to get promoted and be where I'm at, where I want to be, which is, sort of like, let's say, head of like AI somewhere or like a CTO or something like that.
Fair enough.
So yeah, and also I think compared to some of the other firms too, although like maybe Accenture pays like probably not the highest offer, but I think when I interviewed, so for like sort of my MD round, like the final round, my MD round was with our data and AI lead, like for all of Canada. Uh,
Oh wow.
and so my conversation with him and obviously some of the other, like the other firms, it was not like the high level. So I just felt like, Accenture, like obviously sort of wanted me a little bit more. And my conversation with him was sort of like just a very casual conversation.
Right.
And to be frank, I related to him quite a lot too, just sort of on a personal level, I would say. So yeah, I think ultimately it was really the people that made me decide to go to Accenture. They're just generally much nicer people too, especially in data and AI. So
Right.
yeah, very very long-winded answer
No,
to
it's
your
really
to,
good.
to your question, but that's sort of ultimately, I guess, my journey to where I'm at today.
All right, Mohammed, thank you so much for talking about your journey. Now talk to me about your entrepreneurship experience because I know you're big on there.
Yeah, for sure, man. I think I've always been passionate about entrepreneurship. Even sort of going back all the way to high school. I remember sort of trying to start web design businesses here and there, or like small
Fair.
businesses. So I sort of always enjoyed it, and I guess kind of loved it. Continued that throughout undergrad. I remember I actually sort of had this startup called Riser back in the day, and it was actually kind of cool because it helped lots of students, especially first year. The whole idea was, like if you're a first year and you have no idea what a good resume looks like, you could see a lot of the resumes that a lot of the operators have leveraged to get interviews at like Goldman Sachs, Google, Deloitte, and whatnot. So it kind of gives you a sense of like where to start from, and then you can also sort of see how your resume was parsed by this popular ATS back in the day that a lot of the firms used. So it will like give you the insider scoop of what HR would see, right?
I see.
Yeah, yeah. So it was actually pretty popular, used by like universities to like from the US primarily and Canada. We even had like students from MIT and like UC Berkeley using it.
Wow.
So I think it was kind of fun.
I
But
should hop on that.
it's too late, but because the lever's gone, like which was sort of the ATS. They had this API, but it's gone anyway. So it's long gone. But I think it was useful, and it was kind of like the first thing that I built that like people actually found value in and like useful. And it was completely free. Obviously, there's like no monetization
Oh wow. I
strategy on
see.
my end. It was just like, hey, here, this free thing, go use it, and hope it's useful. Yeah, and then obviously, I think sort of recently with Miro, I've had it a few ones sort of here and there, but they kind of didn't go anywhere, did not scale much. It was more so like just building cool stuff that people would find useful. So I recently been building Miro, right? Miro is sort of like this AI note taker for students. Basically, what it does is sort of, in a nutshell, it records the lectures. So you go to a lecture, you hit record, records the lecture, then the AI takes that recording and transcribes it, right? So like audio to text.
Interesting.
And then based on that text, it turns into like this beautiful organized notes for you, sort of broken down by topics, right? And then after that, so like once it kind of generates all these notes, what it does is it builds you like this automated or sort of like auto-generated quizzes that you can practice, right? Based on that note. So it's like, like test your knowledge right there and then, right? So you're like, okay, I know this, I know this. And actually, I think we're developing this right now. You can like refresh, so generate like a bunch of new quizzes. So you can just continually practice until you like basically mastered all possible types of questions. So like when you
Right.
do actually go write a test, if it's like multiple choice or like true and false, like you're definitely gonna ace that. And if it's like memorization based, right? If you like, I don't know, something like biology, let's say, or like OB, one of those sort of like more memorization based
Right. Right.
classes in business, then it also has flashcards, a bunch of flashcards, so you can like memorize key concepts and sort of ideas. So yeah, I think Miro in a nutshell. It has a free tier too, so like you can. I think it gives you 300 minutes of recording per month. Um, so I think it's pretty good. But if you want, sort of unlimited, you can pay for like I think $15 a month.
15, yeah.
And honestly, like the margins are actually like really really bad. I lose money on like most of it. But obviously, I think that's sort of a cost to give as you're trying to scale up.
Right.
So yeah,
Right.
Myro in a nutshell. Deeply love building stuff. And hopefully it's useful to people everywhere.
100%. I mean, even for me personally, anytime I'm at a lecture,
Yeah.
being able to just sit down, type while listening, while looking at the whiteboard, it's way too hard, right? Like being able to take in information, then type it out, but then also retain it, all that at once, a bit too much. So I'm sure Myro would help me a bunch of that. Got to try it out sometime, eh?
Awesome. Yeah. Really happy to hear that. And
Mhm.
would love to know your feedback on it too.
Of course, of course.
Yeah.
And any of you guys trying to go into it, please feel free to check out Myro as well. Now,
Yeah.
massive jump back into consulting.
Sure.
Talk to me about your journey with it. How'd your interest sprout?
Yeah, so I think I sort of talked about in depth how I got into consulting. So maybe like, do you want to know sort of what types of project I've worked on, or like, do you want to
More so just all the way from the beginning. Like, all right, consulting was sick. Like you mentioned the area where all the different firms came in, like Deloitte, for example.
Okay.
But from there, what really made you decide, you know what? I'm a great consultant.
Till I guess go back to undergrad, before I started an internship in consulting, I had no idea if I would be a good consulting or not. I don't think there's a way for you to sort of know.
Right.
Well, maybe there is. So I can talk about sort of the core skills that
For sure.
that's required to be a successful consulting, I would say. Sort of three core skills, right? First one, really just communication skills, and that's your ability to write really really well, but also sort of speak really really well from a presentation perspective, but also just sort of on the fly, working internally, just various stakeholders across all levels, right? Analysts all the way to like a CTO, let's say.
Mhm.
So I think like communication is probably like the very very critical skills that you do need to have. And obviously that I think broadly applies to like all types of jobs across all industries as well. And the second skill I'll probably say is your sort of ability to like think critically and like solve problems. And again, probably generic and applies to most jobs. But I think in consulting especially, it's really really important because sort of the essence of what you do is solve problem.
Right.
And there can be sort of many ways and many sort of toolkits that you do leverage on a day-to-day basis. Like if you're sort of business strategy, then like your tools are probably the frameworks and whatnot that are business focused. If you're like data and AI, like sort of me, then you leverage a lot of technologies, right? A lot of sort of like data and AI solutions. But at the end of the day, it's sort of thinking about a problem critically and finding the best solution that works for the client. And finally, I'd say the third skill is honestly a lot of people say like sort of like technical skill, like oh you need to be good at like PowerPoint, Excel, or like some sort of like technology. But I think it's just broadly just like your soft skills, like a lot of like intangibles. Like if I would put it in one way, it's kind of like finesse.
I see. I see.
And so what I mean by that is
Mhm.
like just having incredibly high EQ. So when you're in a room with like let's say full of senior leaderships, there's sort of a lot of things being said without anyone explicitly saying anything. So it's like yeah, can you read a room? And then with like a bunch of cues from the clients when you sort of do propose an idea, and they'll give you feedback that's not really like explicitly spoken. And also like just internally, there's a whole lot of like political dynamics that you need to
Right.
like leverage. So I think if you want to be like successful, like tangibly, just having like very very high EQ, and like very like something tangibles, right? I think it's really really important.
Mm.
So yeah,
I see.
yeah,
That's like I never really thought about how important EQ was. Being able to read in between the lines is what you probably meant, right?
yeah, exactly.
And it's not something, it's not the first thing that comes to mind, but even taking a look at it, whether it's even the podcast, right? Talking to people on a day-to-day basis,
Yeah.
EQ is really, really important. Now, you've got amazing communication skills, as
Thank you.
evidently shown on the podcast.
I don't know about that.
Talk to me about your technical skills. How'd you get, popular there?
Yeah. Well, so I did sort of study computer science in undergrad. So I studied like business with a concentration in finance.
I see.
And computer science. So I guess I do have like formal training in computer science with that, like a suite of technical skills, including programming languages, knowledge of software development, sort of broadly like technical skills, I would say. But if you have not studied computer science, and to be honest, I don't think today you probably do not need to study computer science like at a university. to be very technical, just because there's like a shit ton of like just resources that are really, really high quality. You can actually learn computer science from Stanford, right? There's a bunch of YouTube videos that are better than any university here in Canada, right? Or MIT. Or you can take a course on Coursera taught by like some of the best professors out there. So if you really wanted to get technical, there's definitely a lot of avenues. In terms of what I did, so obviously just sort of like CS background. Although I do think it's actually really, really helpful in distilling or instilling sort of the fundamentals of how to think, in a computational way. And I think it's actually super, super impactful and helpful in your like day to day, like in the corporate world, if you have a sort of like STEM or like sort of computer science background. Because even when you're thinking about like business problem, being able to sort of think about it from a computational perspective and frame it like, oh, like what does this look like from a like a data sort of
Being able to relate it to other topics, right?
yeah, like it's just I think it gives you a different lens to like approach problem solving, and I think it sets you apart from like all the business undergrads, let's say, right? Which is they sort of they're thought to sort of think in one way, but when if you can bring like sort of both lens, especially if you're like a product manager, which I've sort of done a bunch of projects, and actually my next one's going to be also happy to talk about that. It's going to be in product management, like especially if you're a product manager, having sort of the business acumen and the business backing, like just good business sense, understanding clients and whatnot, customers and whatnot, combining that with some like degree of like technical knowledge and ability makes you a really, really good fucking PM. You can build shit,
Right.
and then people actually love it. So yeah.
I mean, I actually have a friend who's in PM
Okay.
currently.
Yeah.
He was actually on the 10th episode of this podcast.
Cool.
His name's Seth. He worked at Microsoft and a bunch of other really, really cool places.
Cool. Yeah.
He's always trying to tell me, yo, don't go into consulting, stick to PM. It's super sick because you're able to build something that you're super duper proud of in the future. Right?
Yeah.
And he's low-key inspiring me. It's very interesting learning about these different avenues, and the fact that you could even get it from business itself, super inspiring.
Honestly, it's probably not wrong. Like if you can go to product and like you like it, and I'd probably say go to product. But the thing is, though, at Accenture we're sort of unique in the sense that you actually have the opportunity to do like real PM work.
I see.
So I've actually done a project where I was a product manager, sort of like a senior product manager, working directly with the director of product management at a leading global asset management. They have like I think like I don't know $13 trillion or whatever under management.
Wow.
And we were designing, I don't know how much I can share, but we were sort of broadly designing a universal ID platform for them. So what that basically means is like they have a bunch of different business units, as you can sort of imagine. Like workplace investments is one of them, personal investments is another one called PI. So it's sort of like various business units, obviously different types of clients and different. So as you as an individual, you could have a workplace investment account as well as a personal investment account, right? So those are two separate accounts stored in like separate databases. So if I'm like, let's say, I don't know, the CEO of this company, and I would just want to know simply, how many unique customers do I have? And like how much money do I actually have in total under management? Like it's really, really hard because these data sets are completely separate and they don't speak to each other. So there's no way to look at you as an individual holistically or like your household sort of in totality, like holistic. So it's like, hey, let's build a universal ID platform where all of your accounts, across sort of all of our different business units are all attached in one universal ID. And so I was there. I came as sort of a I don't know senior product manager, and we work as with sort of a global team of engineers. I guess all across, mostly in the U.S. And I was reporting to like their director of product management, so like really helping her. And it was kind of cool. Like I got to experience what that entails. Sort of sprint, the whole shebang of like road mapping and defining the product vision, handling user stories, backlog, like basically like I was a PM.
Right.
And that was really cool. And I think it's really cool that at Accenture, you have the opportunities to, not just sort of like do like business strategy work, tech strategy work, data and AI work, which honestly I think also one of the reasons why I joined Accenture too. But also like if you want to actually go do PM stuff, which you can. And on that note, actually, my next project is also going to be I'm going to be a senior product manager at a bank in the US. So again, sort of very similar role.
Can't reveal the name or anything, eh?
No, no, I can't do that.
Right, but it's amazing, man. I'm glad you're able to, just be a consultant, tap into your technical and soft skills, combine into something beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Do you mind talking to me more about your whole avenue of I guess in a sense that, all right, I had my technical skills, I had my communication skills. What was your thinking through university? Talk to me about perhaps second, third, or fourth year, where your mind was at in terms of breaking into consulting.
Yeah. So I think when I was interviewing, it was during COVID, right? For full time. I did interview, across very, very like different field, ranging all the way from like, research, machine learning research, engineer at, the likes of like Huawei, let's say, actually down in Saga, or like BlackBerry, like their QNX team, like go do machine learning for us, right? So like those types of roles, like super technical, to like very, very like non-technical roles like an LDP, which is leadership development program,
I see.
to like a insurance company or something like that. In 5 years you'll get a management role or whatever, leadership, like they develop you to become leaders. So sort of, as you can imagine, like all over the place, and consulting is one of them.
Right.
So I think the way that I thought about it, I think I sort of talked about this a little bit earlier too, is like long-term goals. I want to be in management, whether that's sort of like a CTO or sort of head of data and AI or something like that. I wanted to be in leadership position, and I wanted to not do the same shit over and over again. That's actually why I wanted to stay away from like software engineering. So I also did interview for software engineering at some big tech companies and some small tech companies. And I failed a lot of those interviews because I did not lead code enough. So, anyways, I think I thought about like where do I want to be like 5, 10 years down the road, and what is it that I'm actually good at and enjoy, right? So, sort of the framework here is like at the intersection of like what I actually enjoy, what I'm good at, and what I think is gonna like be like sort of the next big thing, 5, 10 years down the road. I think like Jeff Bezos has like this thing where he like looked at the growth rate of the internet and he's like, oh, this is gonna be huge.
Right.
So it's sort of like something similar to that, right? Kind of look at the growth rates of various industries. And it's like 5 years, 10 years down the road, if you project it out, how big is that going to be? So yeah, it's sort of like maybe those three factors, and at the intersection of that, it's like okay, cool. I think consulting, data and AI, but with sort of a strategic lens. But also, if I want to get my hands dirty, I can get my hands dirty and actually build shit. So yeah,
About Jeff,
yeah,
I was watching a video earlier on. I'm pretty sure it's from the Modern NBA. Don't quote me on that, but they were mentioning how with Jeff, what the plan that he essentially had was he took the top-down approach, very similar to what you did, in terms of, all right, this is where I want to be. What are some fixed variables that I've got? Number one, no one's gonna complain about cheaper prices, right? So he thought, why don't I just make it as cheap as possible consistently? So he had his online bookstore. Then from there, just started scaling until he kind of rules e-commerce, which is I find really, really sick. Like that whole entire journey.
yeah,
And I feel you even being able to have that, you know what, I want to be a CTO in the future and having that vision as well. Super inspiring, man.
awesome. Yeah, well, I think Jeff is interesting, but yeah, I think I wouldn't say very parallel, but interesting.
Fair. Now, talk to me about your day to day at Accenture.
Cool. It depends.
I feel that's very
I think that's sort of the cliche answer, but
Mhm.
honestly, that's actually the truth.
Right.
The truth is it varies quite a lot. Like there's a lot of variance depending on sort of the nature of the engagement that you're on, which is sort of the project, and the client and the team as well, right? So I've sort of been lucky to do, let's say, a bunch of different types of projects. Yeah. So honestly, I think it depends quite a lot, right? There's eight like a shit ton of variance depending on the
Right.
type of project that you're on, the client and the team. So I've been sort of pretty lucky to do, I'd say, like different types of projects, ranging from like typical management consulting. Hey, how do we sort of streamline this process? How do we like redesign it? And how do we sort of rethink pricing, right? Like how do we sort of do like data-driven pricing strategies as compared to sort of like some of the traditional ones like cost plus or like basic stuff like that.
Mhm.
All the way to sort of like technology strategy work, digital strategy work, like product management work,
Mhm.
and now more recently sort of like data and AI, but from a strategy perspective, like assessing current state for a global pharma client, and sort of defining a strategy as well as a roadmap. So like it really depends, right? And across those various types of projects, as well as various industries and various clients, your day to day, varies quite a lot. Like product management, I'm doing like actual product management stuff. So I'm on Jira, I'm on Confluent, I'm on calls a lot.
Nice.
It's like running daily sprints and whatnot. Or actually, I had a Scrum Master do that. But anyways, so like it depends quite a lot, right? Or like if I'm on sort of like a technology strategy project, I'm mostly just on PowerPoint, very like no Excel, but just mostly PowerPoint and building pretty slides, and lots of calls.
Right.
So it really depends, I would say, right? And I've also sort of had the opportunity to like do like just like financial modeling work, but that would entail, basically you just doing Excel stuff all day. So right, like it depends quite a lot, but also I'll say common thread across all of that is just lots of meetings, and you'll be forced if you hate it, or love it, to talk to a lot of people,
Hmm.
write a lot of emails, write a lot of pings. So yeah.
That's something else I actually wanted to talk about, the whole communication aspect of consulting. Mentioned it a few times during the podcast itself, but talk to me about how important it is to be able to just talk and shoot the shit with anyone.
So here's how I kind of approach communication in consulting. I think there's a time and a place for like everything. And so what I mean by that, you sort of have to be cognizant of your stakeholder who you're talking to. Like if I'm with an MD, and it's like sort of a serious conversation, like it'll be very professional, and like I'll be very formal, right? Well, I'll write very formally. Actually, all external communications, clients, third parties, whatever, very formal, right? I'll actually use my shift buttons. I'll capitalize everything, and I'll use absolutely proper grammar. But internal communications, I don't really care. I don't even use shift, right? So again, like you just have to be cognizant of like who your stakeholders are, what the situation is. Again, this goes back to EQ, right? And that's sort of how you like balance being too formal versus like fun. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Or like if you're at a social after work.
Personable, right?
Exactly. Like if you're at a social after work, you don't want to like close. Like you don't want to be like fucking all formal and shit, right? Just
Right.
relax a little bit.
Right.
So like yeah, like that's sort of my approach to communication.
Mhm.
But overall, like if you're like presented to a client, obviously, I think there are like some tips, right? Be very very structured. Sort of go from top down to bottom. And then have a story, right? Actually, maybe another like really really important skill to having consulting, be a really good storyteller,
I
right?
see.
Bring whoever you're talking to, especially with sort of external stakeholders, even internally too, along with you in this sort of like compelling journey or this compelling story that you have crafted, right? And some of the ways you do that is, obviously, good like the typical advice for how to tell good stories, have a beginning, climax, ending, and so forth.
Mhm.
But also, just sort of being really structured as you like craft that story.
Fair enough. Fair
Yeah,
enough. I feel storytelling, obviously I don't have that much experience in consulting or the
yeah,
whole slide deck and all that,
yeah,
but storytelling and whatever it might be, even with content creation, when I'm creating reels or graphic designs for KKC Consulting,
yeah,
I started realizing anytime the guest or I am storytelling, it works out so much better. Like my most viewed reel is just storytelling, right? Nothing to do with consulting, just storytelling. And I feel everyone in whatever it might be, whatever field, should improve in storytelling and communication. But apart from those two pieces of golden nuggets, talk to me about some other advices that you'd have for someone trying to break into consulting.
yeah. Well, so I guess like real advice that I would give,
Completely honest,
right?
yeah.
Well, first and foremost, I think I'd say it's like fairly competitive industry, um, and there are sort of like certain schools that are a lot more like stronger in terms of like pushing people into consulting. I would say I won't mention any names, like certain business schools. So if you're not like at one of those business schools, right? I think the honest is sort of on you to like kind of push yourself up, right? And some of the ways you do that, well, first and foremost, I think academics, like just sort of honestly, if you have good grades, like easy way to stand out, right?
Mhm.
First thing. Second thing, if you don't have that, right, it's your extracurriculars, ability to sort of be involved in leadership positions at your school, where you do develop actually a lot of the soft skills, right? And it also kind of helps you stand out among everyone else too. That basically more or less same courses, more or less same types of interests and whatnot. So like two sort of tangible ways. Final I'd say advice is like try to like build a network of people, whether that's sort of like in industry or at a firm that you're at, especially if they went to the same school as you. So I've had I think like two coffee chats in my life before I joined consulting, like where I
Really?
was like reaching out to people.
Right, right.
One of them was at some girl at BCG. That was they had an interview coming up, and I was not prepared. I was panicking, but she went to the same school as me.
I see.
And I reached out to her and it was super helpful, right? And if they went to the same school, they'll probably like be a lot more open to like getting back to you too. So yeah, like try to build a network as early as possible, especially if it's someone at a firm that you want to be at, or someone that's doing sort of the same type of work that you're doing. I think it goes quite a long way. Obviously, the earlier that you sort of build that and foster it, right? So it's not just like this transactional thing, like, hey man, I need a fucking referral like the day before.
Out of nowhere, just a random
like
day in
the
the
day
summer.
before. You know what I mean? Like obviously they probably won't reply.
Right.
So like obviously it's a relationship that you do sort of try to maintain. And it's funny actually, like now that I'm kind of like I guess like on the other side, like one of my goal is to like try to be helpful to like as many students from sort of my schools or some of these other schools that are not very popular for consultants, just so I guess I can build the opportunities for a lot of folks and make it a little bit easier for them.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
And I think that's the perfect segue to the end of the podcast.
Awesome.
So, man, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate all the advice you gave to all of us, and I'm sure everyone else appreciates it. And again, please check out Myro. The link is in the description right now. And there's going to be some fire posters coming out for that as well.
Oh, thank you.
All right, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, for sure. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me, man.
No worries. And KKC Consulting viewers, please tune in to next week's episode. Not sure who the guest is, but we'll find out at the same time then, I guess. Have a wonderful day.